right, welcome everybody. I am so glad to see everybody here today. This is the fifth, I think, session of Ike Kaiaulu Community Engagement Program Talk Story Series out of Windward Community College. So totally excited to continue on this very cool series, in my opinion. One of the things that this series does is, and I hope to continue it even after COVID is over, because I think it's an exceptional way to be able to meet with people and not lift a finger. So I think it's really a kind of a cool way of doing community engagement. What we get to add after COVID ends is we get to add the part where we get to get dirty and hands in the dirt and in the Aina. And I'm looking forward to that. And other ways that we can engage within the community. So welcome to our Talk Story series, sponsored by Ike Kaiaulu Community Engagement Program at WCC. I want to point out two things. One thing, first of all, before we jump ahead is, I'll show this at the end as well, but this is our series for spring 2021. And we have the next 3 Fridays the second Friday of every month from 2 to 3. And we've got a whole lineup of wonderful people. In fact, one of them's here today. I'll leave that as a mystery. You can maybe find her in the crowd that we have. We have actually 51 people registered to come today. So I'm hoping that they'll kind of flow in as they're able to today. So let me get to the reason that everyone has come today. And that is to welcome our community partner, Zach. Zach is our guest today, and he is here to introduce himself and tell a little bit about what he does at Kipuka, and maybe give us kind of a vision and purpose for this Kipuka database that he speaks about in this flyer that you obviously have seen. And maybe he can show you a little bit about, what it actually does and how exciting it is. And what's really cool is the audience today actually is kind of a whole bunch of people. We've got students, we have administrators, we have teachers, faculty, all kinds of different people from the community as well. So other instructors from other campuses. So I've got a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different people coming to this Kipuka database and to Zach today to kind of learn as much as they can and use it as they see fit. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Zach, and maybe he can do a little intro of himself and tell us a little bit about Kipuka database. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zachary Smith. I'm a transplant from the mainland, but I came to Hawaii in 2004 to go to UH Manoa. And after school, I moved up to Seattle for a little bit, and then I came back in 2011, living in Kailua on the windward side. I started working for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as an intern then, working with their spatial data and their cultural sites data. And we created the Kipuka database web map. And since then, over that time, I've been building on our land database, and I've also transplanted over to Maui. So that's where I am now. So greetings from Maui. So the reason this exists really is because we had a lot of cultural sites data from the State Historic Preservation Division that wasn't really available. And we wanted to house that, as well as a lot of land award documents that we basically digitized. We found that these departments, these state agencies had no digital versions of their documents. So we scanned a lot of information from the Land Division and from the Bureau of Conveyances and from the archives, and we put it up publicly, available for anybody to, on any island, to come visit and check out. And this is the kind of the result of all those efforts, as well as, part of it is helping out our agency answer questions of compliance or of advocacy questions. And it's also a public resource that we provide. And we got an almost universally positive feedback about it. So it's been used and passed along by word of mouth and kind of grown in users. I was just looking at the makeup over the last year. It was a weird year, but really our user base comes from all over the world. But Hilo comes in at the #1, followed by Kahului, then Los Angeles, then Kaneohe. So pretty diverse little spread there. Kailua is in there as well. I'm sure there's a lot of different levels of experience amongst this group with having used this, up to and including never seen it before. And hopefully we will get some questions though, because I'm happy to answer anything I can. And even later on, if you have questions, you can always email me. Happy to be of help.
Would you want to show us the screen so we can see a little bit of the database? Because I think I'm visual. I don't know about you guys, but I'm visual.
I'll share my screen here.
Okay.
And then I'll kind of talk about what we have and on our website here. So we have this very large multi-purpose web map, the Kipuka web map, but we also have on our website more focused single issue kind of maps that I made. So for things like demographic information, census information, we have this is a Pohakuloa map of island burial councils. The Trust for Public Land did like a mapping project, and we kind of have a section for that here. Vacation rentals, big issue in Windward. But just wanted to highlight that we also have these kind of more targeted maps that are a little easier and more focused. But this is the main map that we have, and it starts with these layers of the traditional land boundaries. So we have like the moku boundaries here, and then it goes down to ahupua, and then some ili that are maps, so smaller and smaller levels, and it goes to the current county-based tax map parcel level. So when you're all the way zoomed in, will come on, show up, and then you can see down to like the parcel level detail. And then the two, other than the boundaries there, the two main sections of Kipuka are those historic sites. So these brown points, polygons, actual sites from the Historic Preservation Division. Not too much other information, just archaeological information, but the idea is that this data was never provided, and that it sort of acts as a house for that when they're able to get their records up. And then the other part of it is the land awards that we've mapped out. So those are basically the first titles of land as they're coming out of the crown or government land through either grants, sales of land, or exchanges, or the Land Commission awards, the large Konahiki award and the smaller Kuleana parcels. So that project has come a long way. So we've islands, and we tie them to the record. So for every ahupua, every moku, every land award, there's a section. Oh, saying I'm unstable here. Can you guys see?
It's really, really small. Is there any way to make your screen a little bigger? I mean, I know the maps are tiny little things.
I'm full screen right now, so I'm not sure.
I don't know how to make it.
It might be just what we can see with the sharing ability.
Right.
But you can either search for a place or a name or a land award and find results, or you can just click at the place you want it to be. So for example, Kahana here on Oahu has the details for that section of land. So there's all of the land awards that are there, all of the historic sites, any available maps that we have in there. And then this is a specific thing to Ahapua, the boundary certificate. So it's actual the legal boundaries of the land of Kahana. And then the land awards, there's a few different types. So we have grants, Board of Education grant and commission awards, and then the associated documents for each of those land awards. And so the whole totality of this idea, you can map out the government lands, the crown lands, and then whatever land sold between that time of 1848 up through statehood, whatever's remaining would be the body of ceded lands that are related to the unresolved claims of Native Hawaiians, as well as the public trust that the Hawaiian Affairs gains revenue from. And so that's never been really, the state's never really fulfilled their obligation for inventorying that land. And so we're trying to fill that gap, that knowledge. So for the land awards, they have these scans. So previously you would have to go to the land division, know exactly what you're looking for, and find it all in different boxes. But we basically provide any testimony relating to the land award or patents, boundary information. So this is a land commission award, which says, they surveyed this parcel. There was testimony that said these lo'i were for this person. And then this is the patent that they were able to obtain on that land. So this is just saying, you now have title to that land. It's no longer part of the Kahana government land. It's now your private land.
That's amazing. So you can actually search by last name?
Yes. So you can search and it will find the name. So if you have Iohi,
yep,
you would find all the land awards for that name. I think there might not be too many. But it's just based on whatever that first title was. So that search will operate in that way.
And so that's just in Kahana Valley, that family in Kahana Valley, because you've already downsized it to Kahana.
That's right. So if you click there, it should say, oh yeah, there's Kahana. Yeah. And actually that wasn't government land, that was a Konahiki land. So they had the rights, the native tenements had the right to obtain their land through the land commission. And so that didn't actually come out of government or crown land, but out of the Konahiki's land.
Wow, that's amazing that all this information is no longer in little boxes. I don't know if you remember, but the other day when we spoke, I talked about going through Ancestry.com and finding my great-great-great-great-grandfather's will. And in it, it talked about the land being given from him to his wife, to his children. And so having that Ancestry.com with the actual documents in it, scanned and everything, is pretty amazing. And now to think that you can then take that one step further and do a search based on a last name, based on the area mentioned in the will, and find out where and how it went from him to his wife, to his children, his 6 children. And then what happens, right? You've got 6 children, 1 piece of land. How does it then make its way down to me with no land? So very interesting to think about how land moved from one family member to another family member, and having it all in one database is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So, oh,
there's
go ahead.
documents that detail all the transfers of title from that point forward. So from wherever this land went, there's like an index, and you go to the Bureau of Conveyance and you can look up the name, and it'll tell you that this person granted it to the next person. You can follow those titles. And so we've actually trying to also, we the Bureau of Conveyance had never digitized those documents like from like pre-overthrow times. And so we went in and scanned all their old moldering microfilm to try to be able to provide that information out. And it looks like the Bureau is, where they've digitized it again, where they finally funded the digitization. So you're not necessarily the only people doing that, but that is a valuable tool as well. And we're trying to get that ready.
Yeah, for sure. Is this a good time to ask people if they have any questions, or would you like to talk a little bit about the mission, or did you, of why, I guess one of the reasons why you are doing this database is for people to use it. What are your hopes for having community go in and actually use these databases?
Yeah, so a lot of the online purpose of this was to tie that sense of place to the historical records. So looking at your place and seeing what's around it is a little different from like a traditional records database where you're just looking at a folio or a document. So this way, there's a spatial element to this where you can find, so this is like a selecting features within a certain, so if this is a point of interest, you can just say, well, what's within 500 feet of that? And it'll just pick out all the records, land awards, and historic sites include. So that I tying spatial knowledge or relational knowledge of space to an area, and also to empower people to say, hey, wow, there's a lot of interesting artifacts or sites in my area that you have no idea about, but it was really maybe a habitation site for some of the first people here. And
I wonder,
idea of like fostering place names. Well, go ahead.
Sorry, that made me think of the land that is in the back of Manoa Valley, where my brother has a farm. And he's been recently asked by some incredible bottle hunters. They are bottle hunters as their hobby. And first, they probably looked at this database and saw that in the back of Manoa, there is, has been settlement. This is like beyond Lion Arboretum, way up against the mountain. And because they know that there was historical sites back there, not historical sites, that makes it sound like it's part of a registry or something, but the fact that there was settlement in the back there, there are, of course, historical sites in the back of Manoa, but they're not digging in them for bottles. They found this and have now started collecting bottles in that back area because they know of the village settlements that were back there, not in ancient times. Well, what is ancient? It's all relative. But the various different usages for this database.
Yeah, and you touched on one of the problems with like publicizing historic site information is that there is that element of
exactly what I just said.
Privacy that you want is with historic, to shifty, and it's all public record. Like you can go down to that state agency and look up reports on these sites and find all kinds of burial information and all that, but we scrub a lot. We scrub all the burials from these records for the public version. And then we have internally, our compliance division can see like the total sites, but this data is also not up to date. Luckily, ShipD now is providing, or is actually digitizing their own records. A lot of this was in response to the fact that none of these state agencies had any digital preservation for these records. And so they were of interest to our beneficiaries. So we were, looking out for that purpose.
Yeah. So but it does bring that up.
There is a lot. That's one of the reasons we haven't been able to fully implement that data set, is because people say, well, what about burials, and like people like looking for artifacts and things like that. It's a valid concern. It's definitely part of.
Yeah. So it's interesting that when you have land that people want to find out as much as they can about it, for all kinds of reasons, whether it be looking for artifacts or bottles or burials, and where to, position the house, and what it's hard, I'm sure, to make this data available, but not available, but available. It's a difficult situation. Interesting.
Yeah. And we kind of discussed this a lot, and we kind of came up with our realization is that really the public benefit is higher than the detriment of like the people who are trying to manipulate this stuff. Is they understand how to get access to this information previously, but we also want to make this available to all people in the state for the beneficial purposes of providing this information.
Right. Are there any oh, sorry, Zach.
No, I was just saying it's tricky.
It is tricky. Are there any faculty or those in education that might think that there was a way that they could use this database in their classrooms? I mean, one thing I thought of immediately when you brought up the maps and the ili and the ahupua'a and the moku, I was like, oh, I wonder if you could make us a map quiz, because in All Hawaiian Studies 107, as Ka'iolani knows, we're always trying to do a map quiz. And I was like, oh, a map. How can I do a quiz using a nice map? Because ours are, at least mine, they're all right. But can any faculty think of other ways that you could incorporate this into your class?
Jody is providing the link there in the chat. And
Jody,
confirming it's public service. There's no login or anything provided. We wanted it to be open to anybody.
Yeah, I would think that there would be lots of different ways that instructors could have students use this as a tool. By perhaps, I know within our Hawaiian studies classes, many times we have students do their mo'oku auhau, or their family genealogy. It would be an added bonus if they could include a map of that particular area at the time of the konahiki, or konahiki lands, or the land commission. Would be something so simple that you could add to an already done assignment. So one of the purposes of having Ike Kaiaulu engage with community partners like yourself is so that we can perhaps make partnerships between the community partners and, say, our faculty or offices on our campus, or students that are doing, research. We do have a genealogy class that we offer as well. So it might be another database to be able to look at some of the land issues. Pretty cool. Anybody have any questions?
I have a comment, Noi.
Yeah.
So I was noticing when Zach was showing through some of the land commission awards and whatnot, they're in Hawaiian. So it might be a useful tool for in a Hawaiian language class to be pulling up actual land records, right? So whether people are doing research on their own family, perhaps, or a place where they've lived, and they can actually see what a land document looks like and the actual wording, right, in Hawaiian. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
Totally an excellent idea. Yeah.
lot of information buried in these like testimonies as well,
Right.
because their neighbors basically had to like say who was on this land and what were they doing, you know.
Right. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of these documents are in Hawaiian, some are in
Right.
English. They're all handwritten, you know,
Yeah,
earlier days.
this is pretty cool because when I went to the Bureau of Conveyance to try to do my family research on a land award that we found, it was all in Hawaiian, and then I had to go take it to somebody, can help me with this Hawaiian, what does it mean? And then hunting it down in one document will lead you to another document. Next thing you know, you're scrolling through all kinds of microfilm, right, to find them. And they're
Right.
not exactly readable. This is really readable. I like the quality of these images. In some ways, they're almost better than the microfilm, right? How did you do that?
So they're actually scanned from a microfilm. So we had a
Comes
microfilm
out better.
scanner
Wow, very professionally done. Nice, actual. You can read it.
because we wanted to preserve it. Even the microfilm was like deteriorating at the Bureau of
Right,
Conveyance
right.
because they make money off of the earlier records.
This is such a valuable resource. All kinds of research can be done with this. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, I was just reading that or trying to read it with my really bad eyes lately. I think it's COVID eyes. But saying something about by the stream, opposite side of the stream from something, the house. I was just reading a story.
Yeah.
Oh, there. Lands, Makai. Yeah. So learning Hawaiian, Olelo Hawaii, doing this to really kind of look at both. I know that going back to that will that I found on Ancestry.com, it was all in Hawaiian from my ancestor, and then somebody else came and translated it. So finding documents on Ancestry.com or Kipuka Database all can help in Olelo Hawaii classes, and serve a purpose for double checking some of the translations. Because I don't know who those guys were that translated my great-great-grandfather's will. So interesting, all kinds of levels and layers of things that you can do with this database. What do most people use? Most people, the majority of people use these databases for?
So just anecdotally, because that's how I really receive all the feedback that I get, is that people, oftentimes land researchers are using these documents. Some people are looking through the genealogy and kind of pulling out little pieces. Some people just have their place that they're, interested in or responsible for, and the database is like this huge statewide effort, so there might not be a lot for a particular area, but if there is, it can be useful for understanding the land tenure, habitation, and all that.
Yeah. There's a question by Ruth. Ruth said, are you adding more data to this database or is it complete?
Yeah, no, we're constantly adding. So we've already mapped all of the land awards, and then throughout the state, and so all of the land awards for most lands are in the database. The others have to be processed. So there's a lot of like really tricky things here in Waikiki and Honolulu, where land awards are small and they had high value lands. So there's a lot of complaints and just little ins and outs and everything. But yes, we're constantly working on it. So essentially for Kauai, all of the land awards in there. And then we have, this is the crown lands layer right here, this brown or orange or something. But that's essentially going to be put out like the kingdom lands layer. So it'll show what land was crown, what land was government, and what land was Konahiki at the time of the Mahele. And so we have that for less populated islands, Kauai, Molokai, Lanai, Niihau. And then we're working towards filling out Maui, Big Island, Oahu. But yeah, ongoing as part of this humongous work to inventory, I guess, ceded lands.
Wow. That's really, really important, I think, for us as me as an instructor to be able to just pull up a map in class, if I ever get back to the classroom, and just show, what it looked like at that point. What are the divisions? That's really cool.
Yeah, and we are, we're operating off of map sources, historic map sources. There's lots of, some of which are referenced. So like in Kahana, they had whatever registered maps are there, but all of our, a lot of our traditional boundaries came from the government survey maps. So let's see. So these are like island-wide maps, and they kind of stay. These were like public lands at the time, as known, government or crown. But those are our only sources to work with is printed map records. So we're kind of limited because we don't have the total picture, but we're kind of using these as our sources for our mapping project. But this is coming from Manoa Library. They have a good map collection. All the registered maps are available from the, I don't know what's called, DAGs. So they have this searchable map source. So from the Land Survey Office, registered maps. They have Hawaii Territorial Survey maps, Homeland Plat maps, and then the more parcel-specific land court maps. But all these map resources, we're trying to incorporate into Kipuka, but they're really kind of disparate.
Zach, I bet when you start doing the work, like it sucks you in and you can't stop. Like you pull up one map and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to know about this one section. And then you have to find more and more and more. It must be something that just sucks you in and you're like, okay, it's 6 hours later and now I need to get off the computer. I can imagine having access to all of this. I'm afraid to look at Kipuka Database because I'm going to get sucked in. But it's an amazing resource to be able to find information. I think that's great that people can add to whatever genealogy work that they're doing, or whatever government work that they're doing with the database.
Yeah, so yeah, we have users from, before we were like the only provider of like the TMK parcels from a statewide perspective. So wherever, and the counties kind of caught up to that eventually in some state agencies, but they were just using Kipuka to do their routine work.
Wow.
It wasn't available.
So your relation, or the database's relationship with OHA, is that OHA wanted to provide this service? Is that how OHA's relationship with Kipuka?
Yeah, so Kipuka kind of came out, it was part of this idea of having like this repository of all the databases available and all the documents available kind of under one umbrella. And so that was kind of found as this archive or database of databases, as it was called. And GIS interns, spatial aspect to it. And so we basically, this was kind of like the companion, the like geographical companion, where we're saying, okay, but then here is where they are in relation to each other.
That makes sense.
But yeah, the idea was also to provide them, but also a lot of the responsibility of my role was to allow our compliance department to to fulfill their responsibilities and the internal needs of the organization as well. So it's pretty multifaceted.
Yeah, sounds like. Linda had a question about impact on land, what she wrote in the chat. So would this reflect impact on land, for example, flood zones? But that was probably what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so that might be something that would be in like a targeted, if there was like a question that the legislator or someone at OHA had about a specific thing, then we can kind of make our own web map for that question.
That makes sense.
I don't know if they have digitized flood zone maps, but I'm sure they're available or created. You have to maybe create them from elevation data. Yeah, we have, like, you can change the imagery. So to relate yourself, you can actually put the street base map. You can change the transparency. So this is just the street base map. And then this is the data completely overlaid over it. And as these come on, you can actually turn on and off the layers if you're not interested in one section or another. You can set your own bookmarks if you're doing research in one specific area.
That's cool.
And you can kind of align this. There's these, so that's like a digital representation of what the county deems the property boundary, and then you can align that with the land award. And a lot of times they might be the exact same shape, so they kind of, the county, that parcel just came straight out of the land award, or maybe it's subsumed into one or expanded.
So you can see the houses at that point. I think it's right past the houses, right over the stream, and that's the back area that you're looking. Can you add the historical sites on there as well?
So the points of these include these site features as recorded by Shifty, but it also has the place name. So you can search for place names.
You know, it's Alaya is the Hawaiian name for the place.
Then include the archaeologist's notes, basically. So this actually does have broken bottle.
I know.
That's found at this complex. Strange. Usually they don't have this data, but they include the number, so they have, you can look at what are they called? Historic site, like the actual report. The idea was to link those, but the Shifty doesn't really want to do that. They're still working on getting it to their users, that kind of digital data.
Yeah, so that's funny that it's broken bottle, but it also says petroglyphs, so that's a bit worrying to me, because bottle collecting and petroglyphs, I don't know if they go together. That's kind of not a good thing. So interesting.
Yeah, luckily their data is variable.
Yeah. Wow.
Positioning of this data is going to be locatable. Yes.
There was another question in the chat. Actually two. Maybe I'll ask Dana's question first. She said, sorry, I missed the connection with OHA. Is Kipuka part of OHA, sponsored by OHA, or what? Yeah, so OHA is what commissioned this database, correct?
Yeah, so I work for OHA. I'm an employee, and we house this as well as Papa Kilo database and fund it and fund my position.
Excellent. And then Kenzie asked, how do you feel this database helps you connect with the Aina?
Well, I personally have greatly increased my knowledge of land tenure. I find it an amazing records because I'm basically just pouring through the old records. And so there's a lot of amazing information in there that just kind of pops out. A lot of it is understanding how land was used. And I've even gone into kind of corroborate with documents and finding a lot of historical information about, or just social information about the time. So while this encompasses, the Aina, when I'm going around the islands looking at the landlord documents, I'm really seeing how the different times of survey and the different methods kind of showing how people were using the land, what people thought of this land commission process. Right. So where there's some places they just didn't bother with it, or they didn't have access to the means of filling out these land commission awards, surveying their land, paying money for a surveyor to come and going to whatever the office of land agents at the time. So they were just they didn't feel the need maybe to file for these land commission awards in certain places.
Right.
The way they responded to different konahiki, whether people that were granted land eventually later, or if it was part of something where the konahiki was profiting by depressing the claims of tenants. As time went on, a lot of the documents stopped explicitly excluding the rights of the native tenants. And so you'll see in grants up through 1852 years, every grant has in it says, except for the rights. You get this land, but you exclude the rights of the native tenants. And then they kind of just didn't put that in the documents anymore. And then there were different legal claims over time as to what the rights of the native tenants were at the time.
Yeah.
Kind of working outside of the land beyond computer a lot, but get these interesting historical information.
Yeah, I noticed in the work that I've done with archival documents that it seems to be the same people signing all these documents. And that worries me in the sense that should it be the same people doing that? So I'm
surveyors
sure. Yeah.
You'll see the different surveyor names on all the awards, and then you're like, oh, and then now they have these huge tracts of land that
they happen to own as well. Yeah, so I'm sure that again, all of these different layers that you are compiling this database with, that you documents that you see, you can really have a particular perspective when you see things like that, where all of a sudden so many or so few people now own pieces of land as time goes by. There was anybody else have comment on that stream of thinking about land division and the surveyors and same people signing the documents? In the chat, Linda said, some years ago, there was a project to keystroke Hawaiian newspapers so they could be run through a reader and digitized. Would these types of documents be helpful to add to your database?
So Papakilo database definitely has the newspaper indexes. Pretty much anything with a spatial component we tied into Kipuka.
That makes sense.
So I think, were there a giant team of people, we could kind of pull out newspapers and assign them a geographic location. But really I'm really the only one that's kind of doing work on Kipuka, and there's a lot more to deal with. But yeah, they are available from Papakilo, and it's like a community-driven project to clean up the OCR and make them searchable and indexing them.
Right. And that kind of leads to Dana's question, talking about, do you do other collaborations? Are there any other groups that are doing this type of work? And that kind of leads me, before you answer that, let me also say, can you think of a way that WCC, our campus, or any of the CCs in the University of Hawaii system could link up with you? Because that's kind of the point of us talking story, is that we can have some kind of collaboration, whether it be just through a small classroom or, larger groups within the system, helping you out.
Yeah, I met with some folks at Maui College who are doing basically tying all of this historical land information along with language information and making this kind of holistic approach to all the all the records of Hawaii that we have. And so it's really ambitious, and I'm excited to see what they're where they are a year or two ago. But so I just kind of gave my input as to how that would look based on all the lessons that we've learned trying to put this database together. I was going to say that here at Awakonahiki, they were transcribing these land commission documents, and they have searchable records as well. And so that's the School of Hawaiian Knowledge there. But they were doing some of that work as well with the land award documents. Other than that, I don't know of anybody doing the approach where we're doing it. Maybe like in a specific location, they're transcribing out the iwi. So like we have all these windward iwi on here because a former employee was on that in that area, and so he was taking the ties in those iwi. But there's this huge well of unmapped iwi names that come out in the documents. So in our like index of all the land awards, you can see that these are all in this one named iwi. And so there's like an amorphous area on these land awards where that would be. So it would be like another approach to mapping out iwi, even though they're not really present on other maps.
Wow.
Ever. So, and that a spatial area may have been lost over years. That's really exciting. Like there's a million things that could be done with this as far as projects or further work. There's really a lot of extra work that can be done. There's a lot of questions to be asked basically because of having this available.
Yes, definitely. And just from our conversation today, you can hear all the different ways that it can be used. I have a quick question. We've got about 3 more minutes. Can you, Zach, put your email into the chat or
Yes.
a way to contact you if anybody has anything they'd like to contact you about, so that directly?
Well, I had to stop sharing to access the chat. I noticed when I do Zoom, I can't.
You can't see the chat?
Screen share and do chat. So.
Okay, so Zach's going to put his email. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Where do you access the documents is the question. So Jody, each place or shape has a details page. Okay, so if you search for a record They can kind of go based on which layer it is. And then within the results, you can access the details. So for each, depending on the type of feature it is, in this case, a land award, it'll be, you go to links to other records and you can find all of the documents we have, as well as some other information on a feature. And if it's a, in this case, the moku pops up. If you click on there, it'll also access the details from that. So for this one, this traditional land boundary, so it will have all of the land awards, historic sites, maps, and then within that, sorry, my internet is a little slow, but you can actually move within the details page between places. So all of the auhau in Kolapoko, you can access their details pages, or within land awards, you can access that. So there's kind of like two sets. There's like the map and then the details pages. That's the second level, I guess. And then the documents themselves are in links to other records or maps or some of these tabs.
That's awesome. Awesome that the documents are there with, you know, as the check, which is how we're taught in academia, that you always cite the sources. So that's pretty cool. And the actual document, to be able to see it, which is great. I just want to say, as you look at these last couple slides, first of all, thank you so much, Zach, for being with us today. I'm just blown away with all the possibilities that we can use this database for. So cool. And hopefully everybody's got all the information. But if you still have questions, you can contact me or contact Zach. I thank you all for joining us today. Please stay tuned for next month's Talk Story session, where Haley is right there with us. Did you find her? She's like right there, right under me in the Brady Bunch squares. She will be joining us from Kanu, Hawaii. So I appreciate you, Zach, and thank you so much for all that knowledge. And hopefully this will lead to collaborations on many levels. And thank all of you for coming today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Auhau, malam pono. Bye.
Thank you.